So today we're going to go through some different strategies for this reading section. So when you are first looking at your reading problems, the first thing that you want to do is you want to get everything you can from that little blurb at the front. So it's like a sentence that's in like a lighter script that just tells you about what type of passage you're reading. Second, you want to read the whole passage. I know that in things like the state test, you get told like, go to the questions first, read them first, and then read the passage. For this type of test, you want to read the whole passage first. And while you read it, you want to read it actively. So making little summary notes by the passage or by each paragraph. And then at the final, after you're done reading it all, just making a little note of summarizing the big picture of the passage. So what was that passage communicating to you? And what do you think the author's big intent was in writing this passage? So when you get to the actual question part, that's when you start going through the second strategy, where first you're going to unpack the question stem. So this is where you're going to identify the type of question that's being asked. Then you're going to research the answer. So you're going to go back into the passage, and this is where you're going to find whatever it's talking about, whatever section, and reading like the bit above, the bit below, where it's at, and looking at the question within the context of the passage. Third, you want to predict the answer. So intentionally, there will be some answer choices that are there to trick you or mislead you on purpose. So what you want to do first is, before you read your answer choices, go ahead and predict what you think that answer should be. And then you're going to find the answer that most quickly or most represents the answer that you have come up with. So when we're unpacking question stems, there are about 5 types of questions that you're going to see on the reading section. So the first is called a global section, or global question. This is a question that asks about big pictures ideas, including both main idea and tone. So these are the questions that have to do with the passage as a whole. Some examples are listed. Which of the following best states the main idea of the passage? Which of the following best describes the author's attitudes toward the Bureau of Indian Affairs relocation program described in lines 54 through 64? Which of the following statements best captures why the Bell Project exemplifies Wilma Mankiller's vision of the Cherokee? So it's looking at the passage as a whole, or chunks that are really large. This is why we read the whole passage first before we answer the questions. Next, there's a detail question. These ask about explicitly stated points. So instead of asking about the whole passage, it's asking about something really detailed. But these questions, you can find the answer within the passage. You can point to it. So examples could be, according to the passage, what makes a tropical beach a specialized area? According to the passage, William Mankiller included so much Cherokee history in her autobiography because... And the passage states that among the Cherokee tribe's accomplishments in the mid to late 1800s was. So these are detailed, specific questions that can be found within the passage. Third, we have inference questions. These ask about points that are unstated but strongly suggested based on 2 or more details from the passage. So this is where you're going to have to use some logic and think through, what do you think that is trying to be communicated to you through this passage? You won't be able to find these answers specifically in the text, but you can find clues to what the answer should be. Some examples: the passage most strongly suggested that the Mayan people were the first to flourish in coastal Mexico because they. When Mankiller states, we found the strength to do what had been done before, she's most clearly referring to. As depicted in the passage, the attitude of the Bureau of Indian Affairs in carrying out the relocation program can be best described as. So notice the key factors in these questions. So for the first, it doesn't say the passage stated, it says the passage most strongly suggests. So that tells you that it's not specifically stated in the passage, but the passage is suggesting something. The second and third use language like most clearly referring to and can best be described as. Whenever you see those clearly and best terms, those are, again, communicating to you that you have to make some sort of inference in what's trying to be communicated. Fourth, we have a function question. This asks why or how the author wrote specific parts of the text. Also includes questions about figurative language or rhetorical questions and other questions related to the way author crafts the sentence. So this has to do with you're looking into why the author is communicating things in certain ways. So why the author has written things in specific ways within the passage. So examples of the question: the comparison between a gymnasium and an open market in paragraph 4 is meant to blank. The author mentions the forced relocation of the Cherokee in line 24 through 27 in order to. The author introduces the San Francisco Indian Center in lines 66 through 69 in order to. So these questions a lot of the time will say things like the author mentions or the author does this, and is asking you to specifically think through why the author is making the specific choices that they make. Finally, the most clear to see questions are vocab and context. This asks for the intended meaning of a word within the context of a sentence. So for example, as it is used in line 25, the word dictate most nearly means. As used in line 72, the phrase charged with nearly means. So a lot of these times, these are multiple choice, and it will give you all correct definitions of the word, but you're supposed to choose the definition that most clearly fits within the context of the passage. So this can be confusing because all the definitions normally are correct. You're just choosing the definition that applies. But with all these questions, it's most important for you to figure out what type of questions being asked first, because that can help you figure out what plan you're going to make into solving the question. So do you need to review the whole passage again? Do you need to go to a specific point? Are you going to be able to find a specific answer within the context? These are all important things to consider as you are going through the question. So we're going to do some practice where you're going to identify the type of question that's being asked.